Good afternoon. This is Jack Jovan, Chairman of the Southbridge Town Council. I'm here again with a new edition of Chairman Chats. I'm happy today to be joined by Deputy Chief Joe Hulyk. Deputy Chief, welcome to Chairman Chats.
Thank you for having me, Chairman.
So we asked you to come in as a member of the Fire Station Building Committee. But first, congratulations on your promotion to Deputy Chief. You've been Deputy Chief now for how long?
A little over a year now.
Yeah, and you just recently graduated from a chief training program, correct?
Correct. The Mass Fire Academy's Chief Officer Management Program just about a month ago.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to go to that graduation. It was quite the sight to see all the chiefs throughout the area, you included, and former Lieutenant Jason Quintero graduating from that program. So that's kudos to you. I know it was a lot of work for you, and to bring that level of professionalism to the department. We thank you for going out for that kind of training and bringing your knowledge back to the department.
I appreciate the opportunity that the town gives me.
And you've been on the department for how long now?
I just finished 21 years.
So 21 years would put you at what, 1999?
Correct.
So we're going to talk today about the Fire Station Building Committee. And you've been on the Fire Station Building Committee since I joined this new iteration of the Building Committee. I know I had an opportunity to sit with Max Gullickson, who does the cable program here, and gave a few minutes about my role on the Fire Station Building Committee as the chairman. But really, I've always looked to you to really head up that program and do a lot of the groundwork, given the fact that you're in the department every day. And so I want to thank you on behalf of myself and the town council for all the work that you have done in trying to bring a new fire station to the town.
I'm glad to play the role, and we want to make sure that we get the most efficiency for the least amount of dollars that we can. Obviously, it's a huge undertaking that we're looking at, but we want to make sure it's right for the community and right for the staff and right for the public.
So I joined the Fire Station Building Committee probably about 5 years ago when the acting town manager at the time, Kevin Pecos, was here. Mm-hmm. And I had met with him to ask him some questions about what the status was. And that former committee kind of became dormant. But you were one of the members of that former committee. Is that not true?
I was. Back in the early 2000s, the committee had been revamped at that time. As you're aware, there was one back in the late 80s, early 90s that started. And then again in the early 2000s when it was looking like it would be a project that we could undertake. At that point in time, the redevelopment authority was repopulated, and they were trying to get their plan in place, and we wanted to be part of that plan. During that time frame, we had the chairman of the committee fell ill. And then the school project became the primary target for the town.
And I've mentioned before, out of all the town buildings that we have outside the town hall, pretty much all the rest of the schools and everything had it, either renovations, additions, new middle school like you alluded to. The police station was also built. So really the fire station is the last building to really need substantial either renovations or new buildings. Is that not correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And the last time that the fire station saw any type of renovation was in the 60s when the guys working on duty actually built the last Bay 6, and then Bay 5 earlier, about 10 years earlier than that. So the actual firefighters had a hand in the additions to the building.
Yeah, and no doubt they made do with what they had. But now we're into the 21st century. That building was built in
1899.
1899. So it's safe to say that the town's gotten their money's worth out of that building.
Absolutely. I believe the original appropriation was $200,000 in 1898 to start the project. So I think they've gotten their money's worth.
So the Fire Station Building Committee's goal at first was to develop a feasibility study. You were very integral in that. Working with the architect that we had hired. Could you just real briefly talk about the first steps of a feasibility study? What did you look at first? Was it manpower, equipment, and future needs? Is that how that went about?
Yes. I mean, obviously we have challenges that we face right now with equipment that doesn't fit in the buildings, and with and maybe an inch on either side of the mirrors. The last 15, 20 years, we've been ordering vehicles to a certain specification that we're paying more money for to fit in the building. So we had to look at those needs. What are the needs of the department? And it was actually a fairly difficult task because we know the surroundings that we have currently, and to try and think about how we would do things if we had the space that we were supposed to. So it was a huge undertaking, many hours on phone conferences with the architect, other members of their team, many revisions of how things would be laid out, the apparatus, how many staff members would be working at a time, potential for growth of more staff members at some point in time. So all of those things play into it. One of the big things that we're dealing with now is trying to limit the exposure to carcinogens, cancer-causing agents from the fires, and spreading those throughout the building. So that was another huge undertaking of how we would keep the contaminants in certain areas and then walk out clean the other side.
And that's been a huge initiative that we see in a lot of the new station development. And this station, I think, what we tried to incorporate was cutting-edge technology for that cancer prevention.
Absolutely. Essentially walking in from one side after you come back from the fire, you take your gear off, you take your duty gear off, go into the showers, everything goes into the washers right away, and you walk out clean on the other side is how we envision it.
And because really studies that have been conducted in the fire service has changed over the years. I mean, back in the day, I was a firefighter for a long time in a small town. You know, you go to a fire, you have your turnout gear in, you get off the truck, and you still keep your turnout gear, go up to the day room and sit there with your turnout gear. That's all changed now, correct?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, in many instances, it was a badge of honor to have dirty gear, and that's no longer the case. It's it's causing firefighters to pass away in droves, unfortunately, and we want to prevent that and make sure that everybody has a long life after their retirement.
So currently, the fire department has how many personnel?
We have 27 career staff, and we have 7 call firefighters right now.
Right, and the town council recently allowed you to apply for a grant, and we'll have you back to talk about that grant to increase to how many firefighters?
That would look to add 4 positions, so it would bring us to 31 career staff if we were approved for the grant.
And how many per shift?
That would bring it to 7.
So when we looked at that fire station, and you did a lot of the work on that feasibility study, obviously we're a 24/7 fire department, correct?
Yes, we are.
365 days a year.
Every day.
So firefighters live, eat, sleep all in that station.
Absolutely.
Okay, so currently I think the analysis was that the total number of square feet that if you were to take the existing fire station, all levels, and equipment that you had spread out through the town, how many square feet of space do we use for equipment and sleeping quarters?
Right now, spread out throughout the town, between our station, we have a small storage facility at the DPW on Gulfwood Road. We have things stored at the Moore Street Field House and other places, and that total is about 30,000 square feet.
Okay, and as you work through the feasibility study, looked at your needs, looked at your number of personnel, what is the square footage of the anticipated new station?
36,000 square feet is where we ended up based on the feasibility study, and with the current site that the council voted of Central Street, it's actually a little bit smaller, about 34,000 square feet.
So let's talk about that, because a lot of people have talked about where are you locating this fire station. And obviously, a lot of people have their ideas. They'd like to keep it where it is and build an addition. And also that space that we're looking at, 36,000 square feet of space. What kind of challenges do we have in that?
A lot of challenges. When we first went through the feasibility study, several sites were looked at, and when the study was completed, the Marsh Ave site, as you're aware, was the primary site. We did bring that to council and to the public, and we got some pretty significant feedback from the public side about that site, and we had to kind of go back to the table with that. and came back with either the current site where it is or Central Street being the obvious site for a new facility. If we were going to remain on our current site, obviously it would be a renovation project, but it limits us quite a bit because yes, they can theoretically put 36,000 square feet on that site if we take over some other properties, but we're not going to end up with the true efficiency that we're looking for moving in that direction.
So let's back up a little bit. When the first presentation was made to the council, and you did a great job with that presentation, I just want to tell you, very detailed presentation.
Thank you.
Job well done. Marsh Street was the recommended site first. What other sites had the committee looked at?
We had looked at actually sites all over the community. We looked at a site of possibly Dresser Park. We looked at a site across the street from the Wells School site, which is a current vacant lot. We looked at a site off of North Street, multiples in those areas. So most of the sites, we even looked at right next to the police station because that was brought up at one point. And in each of those have their own negativity to being used as a fire station because of either where it's located, the size of the property, or it just didn't meet our needs.
Yeah, and the other challenge too is a lot of those properties were within what they called the floodplain, 100-year floodplain, correct?
Absolutely.
And if we wanted to get any federal funding, we wouldn't be able to build in those locations.
Correct.
All right, so we brought it to Marsh Ave, and I know we had a lot of residents that came forward opposed to that site because it was right across the street from Eastford Road School.
Yep.
In a residential area and some streets, and people were concerned about that. And the committee went back and looked at additional sites. And originally, that Central Street location was not on the original list. Is that correct?
Correct. Because the original site that we were looking at there, it was restrictive because of the size of the site, and that in order to look at it, there were many properties to acquire to even consider it.
But at the end of the day, when it looked into that station ended up fitting in that area with the caveat that we may have to do some purchase of some additional buildings, correct?
Yes.
Now, with that, obviously we have a Central Street project that went on for a parking lot, and that the idea is to put the station right across from the RMV, correct?
Yes.
And so some of the challenges there, obviously, are the roads in that area. What are some of the thoughts on that that you can bring to the table and let us know that how you work through those ideas?
Obviously, traffic is a concern there. As you're aware, there is a DOT proposed project to revitalize that area and change the traffic pattern through there. We met with the engineers that are involved in that project to kind of lay it out that a fire station could be there. They've incorporated that into their plans to give us some options of changing traffic flows if need be, how they would allow using our Opticom system that allows us to change the lights if we need to for responses, and then giving us enough setback so that we wouldn't be right on La Rochelle Way.
And that Central Street parking lot and that La Rochelle Way, so let's talk about the two locations, because we had a lot of conversations at council where there are some people that still favor putting the station, doing an addition renovation where the station is currently, and the Central Street lot, which was approved by council as the recommended location.
Yep.
Now that Central Street lot allowed did that allow for more maneuverability of your trucks and apparatus as opposed to the current station location?
Yes, it did. At this point, there's really almost no way for us to have either drive-in, drive-out capabilities or two-way positioning for apparatus and ambulances to leave the building. The current site is very restrictive in that nature. And essentially, you're going to end up with two different buildings on the current site, because the original 4-bay part of the station would be used in some manner, but you're essentially adding a completely new area for the apparatus, the living quarters, all of those things, because the current station there would be too many structural issues to deal with.
And so let's talk about the existing station right now. They stated they could do it there, but so we had the issue still of coming right onto a street that's heavily traveled.
Correct?
And lack of space for the trucks in the front aprons, as we currently have, none now.
Exactly.
I believe one of the plans as well stated that we would take part of the parking lot that's for the residents there as well, correct?
Yep, that was part of the option, and then you obviously have the cell tower and its supportive equipment that's right behind the station now, so we'd have to work around that.
And it limited the area for the parking of your firefighters that you have currently.
Absolutely.
So you don't even have a space now where you firefighters park there. Some park on the street in front of the fire station, which
Yep.
we get complaints for too.
Yes, we do.
All right, and cost-wise, so because that's I think the big caveat that everybody in town wants to know, and there was big concern about the fire station building committee. How much more was it going to be to do that fire station and do an addition renovation?
It would be at least $2 million more. They were looking at $28 million plus to do the project with the renovation at our current location, and it would be somewhere between 25 and 26 million for a completely new building on the Central Street site.
And and that's $2 million additional cost before you even get into the building and see if there's any other challenges. Is that correct?
Exactly. Everything based on the renovation is an estimate, and until they actually open up the walls, see what's there structurally, overcome some of the issues. One of the things that I remember distinctly is that they wanted to put the fitness center in the current basement of our fire station, which has water running through it because of the way the drains are set up and things like that. So they would need to overcome all of those issues just to make that happen.
So now let's talk about the potential location, if the town did vote on it. That Central Street location, as far as were you increasing the number of sleeping quarters for firefighters, or was it the same?
From its original use, we did have almost the same numbers of sleeping quarters in the current facility, but they've been converted to offices and things, so we're actually down to about 7 rooms that we actually use for sleeping quarters now. There were 12 in the design for the new facility.
And obviously, I know the cable access has been great. The cable committee is currently running a tour that Lieutenant Callahan had done in the station, so people can get a look at the current conditions. But some of the shortages that you had female firefighters at one time.
Yes, we did.
And hopefully you have call firefighters as well now.
Yes, we do.
Are there quarters for them to use for shower facilities or anything like that?
No, right now there is one lockable bathroom on the second floor that has one shower in it. So when we come back from a major incident or even a small room and contents fire, we have to get all of our staff through that one shower to get them back ready for duty.
So a major fire, so say you have a call out, and it's not just the 7 firefighters and perhaps yourself that go out. You have people that come back in, call firefighters, the off-duty firefighters that come back.
Correct.
And they need to shower before they go home. So you do all of that in one shower, with one shower.
All that with one shower.
And one of the drawbacks, too, is that you've done a really good job of getting some grants. You got a grant for an extraction system to put in the existing station. And you came to the council and said it was great, you got this money, but what was the drawback about trying to put it in now?
Actually, for us to add the infrastructure to put the machine in, they were willing to give us the machine. We had to provide the infrastructure for it. It would cost about 3 times the amount that the actual extractor cost. The extractor was going to be about $6,400, and we're looking at estimates of over $15,000 to add proper plumbing and electrical to accept the grant.
And that's an extractor just to clean the gear for the firefighters that came off of a major fire or even a small fire, contents fire.
Yep. Yeah, there is a standard of how the gear should be washed. It can't be tumbled or extracted at too high a speeds because it degrades the material. So it's a pretty specific type of washing machine or extractor.
So now going back to that Central Street location, so we talked about living quarters, so there'll be quarters for approximately 12 firefighters and people that, if there's a storm or something, can stay in the station.
Yep.
What other features are going into this station? Essentially, a little more square footage than what we currently have,
Correct.
but usable safe. What kind of items are we putting into that station?
So ironically, the increase in the square footage, most of that accommodates ADA pathways, things like that, or American Disabilities Act. As far as the administrative and spaces on that part of the station, when we get into the apparatus bay, you're adding walking spaces around the vehicles. Right now, with the vehicles next to each other, you can't open the doors of the vehicles without them hitting each other. And if the doors are open, you can't walk safely between them without hitting something or getting hung up on things. So eliminating trip hazards, eliminating strike hazards, adding actual infrastructure for putting water in the trucks where they sit, all those things. And then, as we spoke earlier, with the trying to reduce the cancer exposure, we would have a very large extractor that the gear would be washed in, drying units, washers and dryers for the actual duty gear or our regular uniforms. Adding just in that one area, there would be 4 showers so that 4 people could go through at a time, obviously with private spaces and everything. So we'd be much more efficient at moving our people through. Once the gear was cleaned, the space for storing PPE or our protective gear would be right adjacent to that, so it could go from the clean area into the gear storage room. Right now, our gear is stored on the apparatus bay next to the truck. So as vehicles start, things are off-gassing onto the gear, and after we've put things back in service, the gear is exposed to everything in the station.
Okay, and also, I believe we're going to integrate some training into that station.
You know, there is a small training tower that's giving us some additional spaces to move hose lines, do some technical rescue training, generalized firefighter training, forcible entry training, things like that would be built into it.
That's great. And so I know we have a couple of the pictures and the layout of the building. The main entrance would be off of the Central Street parking lot side, is that correct?
Correct. And there would, we have some preliminary designs with that, but obviously a final design would come later of how, there'd be handicapped access and things for it, but it would be off of that, the Hamilton Street side would be the main entrance for the public.
For the public, right. But off of that, parking will be up in the Central Street parking lot area.
Correct.
And then the fire station itself, or the equipment would be towards La Rochelle Way.
Yes, and it would the operations part of the department would actually be on the lower level, and the administrative offices and things and public access would be on the main level or upper level.
So we'll probably have another program again in a couple of weeks, because we're really pushing this along now, because we're at the point where we have the feasibility study done. We know the need is there. If we don't do it, we have to come up with a plan B, and it's still going to cost a lot of money to the town of Southbridge. This project's been going on 30 plus years that we've been trying to build a new station.
Yep.
And we've articulated that meetings 30 years ago it would have cost $4 million. Today we're at $25 million and increasing. So the challenges of funding. We met the other night with the architect who came and brought some ideas. What were those ideas that they brought to us?
So the idea of public-private partnerships, from what we understand, there's a heavier use of it towards the West Coast. And essentially, it's bringing in outside vendors and investors that would come in and build the facility. They would introduce their own architects, everything, to put the project together, and then turn the key over to us. And instead of paying bond payments, we would pay a yearly fee as a lease agreement in some circumstances, and then the building would be sold for $1 or something at the end of the term.
So you're working on that currently, correct?
That's correct.
And we've also met with state senators. You had a state senator that came to...
We did. We had Senator Moore come out. We've had a lot of conversations with Senator Fatman and Representative Durant. We've had some conversation with Congressman Neal's office. Unfortunately, there just really isn't a lot of federal or state funding. There's really no program that's purely identified as a funding mechanism for public safety buildings.
Okay. And they're working on some kind of legislation, but that could take years.
Exactly. They don't even know where they would draw the funding for at this point.
Yeah, and we've offered some solutions to that, but they still have to work on that.
Correct.
So then we've met with the senators about funding. So we're going to come back and meet. When's the next meeting date? If people want to come and sit with us and talk about this station,
A couple weeks.
but we'll post it and we'll get it out there and have people, if they want to come and talk about this, because it is the biggest project Southbridge is going to do for one of the last municipal buildings that is desperately needed. And there's no doubt that it's needed. And I think that's the comment that I hear from everybody is we need a fire station. How much is it going to cost and how we're going to pay for it?
Exactly.
And that's the reason we're out here today is get this word out. I know we talked about it's going to have to go back to the council to be put on the ballot because obviously there's no money in the town to just fund it as they did with the middle school, high school without a ballot question. So this would have to go to the ballot for an exclusion, 2.5 debt exclusion. So there's a lot of work that we have to do between now and we get on the ballot. One council suggested we get it on the June ballot, which I think is too soon because there's a lot of groundwork that we have to do. Is that correct?
Yeah, there is, and as we move forward, and if we are able to get it on the ballot for, say, November, there'd be a lot of firefighters out trying to get the information out, hopefully into the neighborhoods and making sure everybody has all the information they need to make an educated decision on how they want to move forward.
Now, do we have a website that people can go to, a link to see what the feasibility study says, what some of these preliminary design looks like?
Yes, we do. It's the southbridgenewfirestationproject.org. You can link it off of the fire department's Facebook page, the town hall's page. Easy access for there. There's plenty of information on there, and any comments that are left go directly to the chief or myself. So.
And I know you've done a good job of updating that, and we'll get more information out as to the feasibility studies there. The opinion of probable cost is there as well, so that
Correct.
gives a detailed analysis of the anticipated cost. But that was in May we got those costs,
Yes.
and they're already talking about what was the percentage increase if we
Right now, they're talking about a 4.8 increase, and I've heard industry as much as 7. So,
And so 7% on a $25 million project is a lot of money.
a lot of money.
So the more delay that we do, it's just going to be more costly.
Yep, absolutely.
And again, back in I think we had the article when I went to council to present the feasibility study. 1989, they had a fire station building committee at the time.
Yep.
I believe they wanted to do an addition renovation, but it wasn't as extensive as what we have now. $4 million.
Yep, and even in the early 2000s, there was a rough estimate done for a project of probably $7.5 million, and here we are at 3 times that now.
Right. And that project was going to be behind the library at the time, I think, right?
Yep, that was the original site, but when the architects looked at it this time around, they said that there was too much of a grade change, and we'd have to bring in tons of material to make it a level area.
So the members of the committee, there's yourself, John Shugda, who served with you back in the first
Correct.
building committee, former councilor Dave Langevin.
Correct.
We just appointed Mike Julian, the assistant building commissioner, who replaced Casey Burlingame as the town building commissioner representative, correct?
Yep.
And also we have on that as one of the captains, Captain Matthew, correct?
Yep, Captain Jeff Matthew. He kind of took after my promotion, he kind of took my role as from the guys from the floor perspective.
Because your promotion ended up replacing the former Chief DeFranzo's chief position on that.
Correct.
Okay, so a lot of great work that's been done by the committee. We kind of took a little break because of funding, but now it's time for us to get out in front of the committee, in front of the community, to say, hey, the station is needed. It's going to cost money. How do we fund it? So listen, I will implore, and I think you would agree, anybody out there that wants to contact legislators, congressmen, U.S. senators, anybody that can help us get some money for the town of Southbridge so that we can reduce the tax burden, because that's what it comes down to. Because the conversation is always roads. We have roads that we know we need to do, but we also have this project that is desperately needed, and we have to balance all of that.
Absolutely.
So if anybody has any questions, can they contact you to?
Absolutely. Either through my department email, which is linked off of the webpage, and then the fire station, newfirestationproject.org. Any questions that are put into those will go directly to Chief Ray.
Okay, and we'll be back, bring you back before, again, in Chairman Chats, and we'll maybe in another month or so to see the update of any more information that we maybe get on this private public partnership. We also know there's other towns out there that are trying to build a station. Charlton, it was voted down. Their station was it was combined police and fire. They're a smaller fire department than us, but that was voted down, roughly same square footage as ours. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was very close, and the project cost was a little higher.
Right. We know Northbridge Fire Department is trying to put a fire station as well.
Yep.
Millbury Fire. So there's a lot of old fire stations out here that we're all in the same boat. So hopefully, not only will we work on our end, but collectively as a group of fire chiefs and communities to try to push for some funding.
Yes, absolutely. We had many discussions during the Chief Officer program about how we were going to move forward collectively to do that.
Okay. Well, a lot of information here today. I appreciate you coming in, Chief. Again, congratulations on your promotion and all the hard work that you and the department do on a day in and day out basis. A lot of calls. I know a busy department.
Yep.
Tough to get that equipment in and out of there, but you guys do a great job, and we thank you. And we look forward to working with you to try to bring that fire station to fruition, because it is desperately needed. I would love to cut a ribbon to just say, here you go, and for the next 100+ years.
I hope so. And we can't say enough about our staff. They do great work and constantly out on calls, and we want to provide them with a safe environment and an efficient service for the community as well.
All right. So that will wrap it up for today's version of Chairman Chats. I'd like to thank Southbridge Cable TV for their always ever-ending support of the town and getting these messages out and putting a quality program out there. So thank you, and have a good day.